Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Happy Thursday. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm back at it with yet another video. Today we're going to be talking about the up and coming Mars in Aquarius squaring Uranus in Taurus. I'm calling this the Rebel with a Cause, and this is your cosmic wake-up call that might feel like a cosmic clash. All right, well, we're going to talk about one of the more electrifying transits this month, as if we have not had enough of them already. And we're going to talk about the potentially explosive aspects that are happening in the skies as Mars and Uranus square off. Now, this aspect's taking place on February the 27th, 2026, so we're a couple days early, and the energy is already flowing. So if you guys are watching this early, we have really been feeling the square since, well, the solar eclipse that we had on the 17th. So this is nothing new. We've seen a whole slew of planets go through Aquarius and square Uranus. This is the final countdown. So you guys will be feeling that electric kind of pulsating energy this week. I'm going to try to talk to you guys about what to expect, what to watch for, how to navigate. And of course, I'll take you through the 12 rising signs at the end of the video. Now, maybe if you're like me, you guys have been feeling like there's something that's kind of going on inside of us that's pulling us in two different directions. Well, one side of us wants to kind of break free, and the other one really wants security. And this transit is why we're feeling this way. So with Mars in Aquarius, it's known as the Rebel. Uranus in Taurus is the shaky foundation and the things that are quickly shifting, almost like begrudgingly. And then obviously when we see the square, it's kind of having like one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. And so it is pushing us to kind of pick a lane, decide what direction we're going in. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you guys want to see more about me and my work as an astrologer and a reader, check out my courses, my astro calendars, and all that jazz. Check out the links in the description below. You guys can head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. The links are there for you if you want to work with me. And if you want to connect for a personal reading, I do natal chart readings, I do transits, elections, relationship readings, and you'll find all of that there. And if you're new here, it's nice to meet you. I hope you guys hang around and you consider subscribing to my channel. So click that bell button below. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Sharing is caring. Share with other astro-minded people. Follow me on X at BTVAstro, and be sure to drop your rising sign below and let me know where you're feeling the sparks this week. I love to hear you guys' comments. I try to get back to everybody. It's so cool to see everybody kind of sharing their stories and engaging in the comments section. All right, well, let's dive right into this. Obviously, if you happen to be ruled by Mars, okay, so if you're an Aries or a Scorpio rising, you're really going to kind of feel some of the friction with this incoming square. And also, if you happen to have anything in Taurus, or Aquarius, okay? So primarily the later degrees, because the square is happening at 27 degrees of the fixed signs. So if you're a Taurus, if you're a Leo, if you're a Scorpio, or if you're an Aquarius, I would say probably about 26, 27, 28 degrees, you really want to pay attention to the effects of this transit because they can be jaw-dropping. And you'll see when I take you through the rising signs what the aspects are kind of looking like and where the chart is getting lit up. But if you have any planets that are going to be around the 26 to 28 degrees of either Taurus or Aquarius, this is where you really want to pay attention because you guys are kind of like the main players in this square. Now, to understand the true effects of this transit, we kind of have to break down the planets and kind of understand what their archetypal themes are. So obviously we're dealing with Mars that's making an aspect to Uranus. It's the faster moving planet. And this is the closing square. So we can go back and look at when Mars was conjunct Uranus. We can talk about, this last year when we saw, Mars that was coming into an opposition with Pluto, and also it was squaring Uranus. And the last opposition that we had this last fall when Mars was in Scorpio, it was opposing Uranus. So it's made its way all the way through the signs. And this is the last closing square. So it feels like there is a great deal of pressure to take some kind of action. Now, Mars is known as the warrior, right? He is the god of war. So in astrology, Mars represents what we initiate, how we act, how we assert ourselves, and it's definitely connected to pursuing what we desire. So it's our drive or our ambition. It can also be our anger or just kind of raw primal energies. And it's the part of us that really says, I want this, and it goes for it. It is linear. Now, traditionally, Mars is associated both with Aries and Scorpio. That's why I told you guys pay attention, because your chart ruler's on the move. But because it's in a superior angle, I think that, well, Aries and Scorpios, and perhaps even, I would say, Aquarius risings, you guys are going to have a little bit more angst about you because of that superior angle. Now, when we think about Mars in Scorpio, obviously that's more kind of emotional and passionate and kind of secretive. Aries is a little bit more direct in your face. Now, traditionally, we see Mars kind of connected to these signs, but they actually perform in very different ways. Now, usually Mars does its best work actually when it's in Capricorn. We had that a couple weeks ago. Now it's over with, and we're moving into, or I guess through the final kind of chapter of Mars moving through Aquarius, which is a whole different energy. It is a radical kind of air energy, and it is electric when it moves through this sign, because this is a sign that deals with Uranus. So it's more about movements, action, online kind of campaigns, things that are connected to protests, things that are connected to restlessness, and obviously this kind of propelling us into the future. You know, we just had an eclipse here, obviously, so not only are we seeing a Mars-Uranus square, but Mars is coming back into conjunction with the same degree where we had the solar eclipse on the 17th of February. So there's a lot of different layers to kind of understand this particular transit. I think with Mars in Aquarius, like I said, I call this the revolutionary, the Paul Revere's. Mars moving through the sign has this surge of rebel energy, and it's innovative, it is freedom-seeking, and that's because Aquarius is the sign of, the individual within the collective. So it's the humanitarian and the one who really questions authority and refuses to just conform because everybody else is doing it. Mars is also playing off of the energy of Saturn and Neptune. So it's going to be about, certain groups of people that are trying to rile up or kind of wake up or empower individuals to get aligned with a cause. And I think with Mars and Aquarius, it's really been about kind of inviting us to embrace the courage to be different. So it's about innovation, to kind of question whether or not our desires are truly our own, and whether they're a result of past conditioning, maybe societal expectations, or old programming. So like I said, rebel with a cause, and it's not rebellion for the sake of, just being difficult. I think that it's about breaking free from outdated structures and kind of challenging the norms that limit us. And it's about pursuing goals that reflect our authentic vision. Now that's just Mars in Aquarius in a nutshell, but when we really dig deep, we see this mutual reception between Mars and a Saturn sign, Saturn and a Martian sign. So there is going to be this push collectively, and I think a call for people to kind of mobilize and get together and really focus on trying to help inspire individuals to wake up, connect, collaborate, and proactively be building the future. So I like that. I think that, Uranus, on the other hand, is a little bit of a troublemaker. Obviously, this is the planet of awakening, and we are dealing with a collective planet now. Mars moves pretty quickly, about 6 weeks through a sign, but Uranus has been in Taurus for a number of years, and this is the grand finale before Uranus actually returns back into Gemini, where it will stay later in April. So we talk about Uranus, I think that this is obviously the planet of sudden change. I think I've learned astrologically over the years that it can be really hard to predict with Uranus transits, because it has a tendency to kind of pivot, and it doesn't follow the crowd, just similarly to kind of Aquarius energy, because it is associated with that as a modern day ruler. So it does represent innovation. It's about liberation, breaking free from constraints. And because it is the modern day ruler of Aquarius, when Uranus is in Taurus, where it's been since 2018, it's really about shaking up foundations of what we value. We've seen crypto, we've seen NFTs, we've seen all kinds of new types of lending. We've also seen major kind of destabilization going on with food, agriculture, the planet, and everything that's kind of connected to stability and resources. So it can mean that what it's suggesting is that there's going to be one last big bang, materially or financially or spiritually speaking. Now, Uranus is not totally pleased being in Taurus. I've used kind of the, the expression of like trying to pull a bull, out of a pasture that it's kind of like just grazing in, right? It's going to dig in its heels. It doesn't want to move beyond what it's used to eating or where it's most comfortable. So it has a hard time breaking free from old values. Maybe it's old security structures or the ways of relating to money, possessions, and also the body. So this revolutionary energy is being applied more so to like the tangible world. And Mars is kind of like the knife, or it's the cut, or it's the pressure, the quick moving nature of trends, technology, and things that are connected to the masses that is pressing down on Uranus. So it's basically in a superior position, calling for there to be some revolutionary changes in the Taurus area of our lives. Now, the square, on the other hand, is about friction that eventually equates to growth. It's kind of like making diamonds, right? A lot of heat, a lot of pressure eventually turns all of this like rock and sediment and all this stuff into something that can be very valuable. And I think that's a good example of anytime you see anything that's being kind of squared involving Taurus, that a little bit of pressure and patience and time can actually bring us something that can be very valuable. So you see a square when two planets are at a hard 90-degree angle. They have to be basically, in this case, they're in the fixed signs, so they're kind of squaring off with each other. And the fixed signs are known for being rather stubborn and not wanting to make change. So this is traditionally a rather uncomfortable aspect, but it's a productive one. So if you've been undergoing, transit Uranus square your Mars, I feel for you. I went through that a couple years ago. Would not wish that on my worst enemy. But I definitely feel like it really pushed me out of my comfort zone, and it made me take a lot of risks and kind of break free from some things. So I think it was good for me in the long run. But even if you guys don't have that, if you're just experiencing this transit over this next week, it's going to be pushing you to the edge of your comfort zone. I think that really, when we see this aspect, it's forcing movement and it's creating friction. So it's really demanding that we adjust. And the problem is that Mars wants to do it. It wants to do it now, or it's speeding up very rapidly. And Uranus becomes destabilizing. So as we see all of these developments, I think in tech, AI, things that are going on also on the internet and some of these collective movements, we've seen this in the past materialize as major swings in the markets, big, peaks and valleys with crypto exchange and a lot of issues with people trying to on and offboard things. We've also seen big movements that push for people to support certain brands and cancel other ones. Obviously, Uranus and Taurus has taught us that the collective can actually vote with their dollar. But we can see sudden price surges for products, for food. Particularly, I'm keeping an eye on beef because Taurus can be beef or cattle or anything that deals with livestock. And it's playing off of Venus, which is hanging out in the 12th house. Obviously, it's in Pisces, and Mercury is retrograde. So I think we're about to see just sudden increase or calls for more sustainability in farming. We might see that there's going to be an increase of prices of certain tech stocks or certain types of food. And a lot of it's going to be dictated and determined off of, I think, some stuff that's changing with international trade. So I've been kind of watching this and seeing what's going on, like, in Europe, where you've got the farmers that have been pushing back against some of the farming bans that have been taking place, and, the EU trying to kind of meddle with what fertilizers they can use and where they can sell and what the prices are while they're importing food from other countries. Seeing some of the same stuff here in the United States. I live in Texas. You're seeing a lot of stuff about American ranchers and farmers that are very displeased with some of the deals that are being made in South America, El Salvador, even Argentina, for bringing in cheaper food or bringing in cheaper meat, as opposed to supporting, some of the farmers and the people here at home. So angry farmers has been a theme. I mean, over the last several years, we've seen everything from farmers that are in the streets with their tractors, or they're pouring manure or all kinds of things, spraying, people who are pushing back against, at least governments who are pushing back against them being able to try to feed people. And we've also seen it materialize as like movements where people have been growing their own food, or they've been, moving away from big food. They've been going towards farmers markets, or they've been trying to learn more about sustainability. We've also seen the development of lab-grown meat and other things like that that are like meat alternatives. And I think that's been a lot of Uranus and Taurus. But when I think about this aspect, you know, we're going to feel like there's rebel energy coming from Uranus and Taurus, and it is pushing on, you know, security and also energy, Uranus and Taurus. So it's going to be about probably legislative changes regarding energy usage, fossil fuels, things that are connected to oil and gas, any rare earth minerals, and, you know, people fighting over these things, or a lot of major spikes and fluctuations in precious metals. I think that might also kind of come up. But at the end of the day, Aquarius is about individual freedom, and Uranus and Taurus is about material stability. And we're about to see whether or not some of these systems or banks can actually withstand some of the stress tests and the pressure that's potentially coming. The question is do you focus on new ways of being while Mars is in Aquarius, or do you cling on to old ways of holding on while the bottom might fall out from underneath you with Uranus and Taurus? How do you honor both of your needs when it comes to freedom as well as your need for security? Things might be speeding up very quickly with Mars in Aquarius, and it might be really difficult for us to kind of hold on to things that are valuable or potentially even resources. So to me, this is indicating we might see some real spikes with inflation. We might see that there's going to be some money printing going on, or trying to stimulate or inject money into the economy, but it may not be necessarily so good for the banks. Now it's happening at 27 degrees, so it is a later degree, so this is going to be impacting everybody globally. It does mean that it's going to impact the masses. You're going to see mass movements, or you're going to see mass protests, or a lot of people who are going to be speaking out, and that's because it's at 27. So 27 is a Gemini degree in degree theory. So I'm going to read to you guys the Gemini degrees, because this will definitely play a role in this, and it'll also impact some of my predictions. But Gemini degrees, particularly I'm talking about 27, is things that we write, pencils, papers, notebooks, stationery, traffic, streetcars, transportation, short trips, junctions, mechanics, bridges, newspapers, journalists, magazines, newsstands, bookstores, conversations, post office, chats, dictaphones, understanding, educated people, literature, writing and learning, shops, assistants, commerce, merchants, announcers, radio, television, corridors, balconies, neighborhoods and neighbors, personal documents, IDs, passports, driver's license, matchmakers, languages, translations, anything that deals with children or kindergarten or elementary school, pairs, doubles, twins, or siblings, okay? But it's in Aquarius. So that means that it's going to probably take on the theme of people in the streets, or lots of news and conversations about, you know, the pressure of potentially incoming conflict with the banks, or a lot more people talking about financial fluctuations. And it's also probably going to be dealing with transportation or documents, is what I would assume. And obviously it's in a Gemini degree, so it deals with cell phones and cell phone communication. Guys, in the past, you know, when we saw the Mercury, square and the solar eclipse come in, we saw a massive outage across all over the internet with social media platforms, and also I think Verizon. And this may be similar. You may see that there's other outages or, you know, disconnections when it comes to the internet, or that there's going to be a rush of people trying to get on certain websites, or a rush of people trying to move money online or on and off of exchanges, or withdrawing from banks. And people will get angry because there's probably going to be some issues getting on and off of some of these things. So don't wait until the 27th if you know you need to cash your check. Don't wait until the 27th to go to the bank. Don't be rushing to these places either if things get kind of weird because of some of the squares that are going on. And just watch how you're communicating, watch your speed, and watch your interactions with people in your everyday environments, because they can get a little testy. Now, what this basically means, I think, with like the Gemini degree and this coming into the late degrees of Aquarius, reactivating this eclipse, that I would say, man, the 26th through about like the 2nd of March, until Mars is moving away from this most recent solar eclipse degrees, it's a wild card. Anything can go. Mars goes fast, it's hot, it's sharp, right? And then Uranus is something that can explode, accelerate, or speed up. So if there's enough momentum and there's enough people talking about something, it can actually really bring some pretty big and some pretty significant financial changes and implications. I've seen a lot of stories on X recently where you see like, you know, city centers and like town hall meetings where people are coming together who are trying to stop data centers from being built in their communities. And citizens speaking out against it and like delaying it because they know it's going to devastate, obviously, you know, their cities, that it's going to take up the resources, it's going to increase, you know, expenses when it comes to power and electricity. They also have concerns about how it's going to impact the environment. And so recently, I don't remember what city it was in, but I saw that there was like a city town hall meeting that was able to stop a data center being built here in the States. And not only did they stop it, but they got them to negotiate because they started the building process, I guess. Instead of building the data center, they built a park, or they had to agree to, you know, go in and basically bring more beauty and bring more life to their community. Perfect example where the people are like, no, we're not having it. We're speaking up. This is our city. We don't want increased power bills. We don't want, you know, less resources or water. We don't want to be dealing with something that's going to be an eyesore. Build us a park, right? Great example of that square. And that's how it can be used in like a positive way. But I do think that those of us who are not mindful of our short tempers or our words or our driving habits or our tendencies to kind of speed or rush through things, it can have some pretty big physical and financial implications. You know, Mars-Uranus aspects are pretty common for accidents. So if you have to deal with anything electrical, anything hot, or anything sharp, please just be grounded about what you're doing. Take your time, don't rush. Grounding exercises are also really good because there's going to be this sense of just feeling kind of like the electricity, you know, in the air. And that 27 degrees is bringing like a completion or a sense of urgency. It almost feels like whatever is coming is fated, especially with that conjunction to the eclipse degree. So whatever is kind of happening, whatever pressure, it needs to be dealt with right now. Now, this is also amplified because both Taurus and Uranus are in fixed signs, so neither one wants to budge, but the one that's going to budge is likely going to be Uranus. So that's because Mars is in that superior angle where it's beaming down on Uranus, ruled by Venus, and Venus is retrograde with Mercury. Mercury is retrograde with Venus, so some of the financial changes or things that are happening internationally and behind closed doors. And then when we look at the dispositor of Mars, Uranus is that, as is Saturn, which is conjunct Neptune. So a lot of it's going to be about, I think, individuals waking up and starting to see more and more where all of this development in tech is actually raising prices of energy rates. Guys, why do you think they're wanting to put so many data centers out? Why do you think that they're pushing basically to have more control over resources? Because the money is going to be in the data. The data is being paid for with everybody who's either mining or people who are using all this tech and all this AI. And yeah, I think that that's kind of the direction of where this is going. So when you start to see some increases in your energy bills, you should be asking why. I think a lot of citizens might be the ones who are kind of eating this personally. Now, the Sabian symbols are interesting too, because we're going to read the Sabian symbol for Aquarius 28, because we're going to round up. And Aquarius 28 is a tree fell and cut up for firewood. So that's kind of interesting because it's definitely dealing with like natural resources and such, with Taurus being involved. All right, so let's read this to you guys. A tree felled and sawed. The keyword is immediacy. The theme is doing what needs to be done. The symbol speaks to foresight, preparation, and ability to quickly grasp what needs to be done in a crisis and do it. The image of a tree felled and sawed symbolizes the practicality and sacrifice of the lesser for the good of the greater. The emphasis here is the common sense of initiative and the wisdom of not waiting until the last minute to get things done. At its highest, it represents industriousness and efficiency in a type of individual who is prepared for any unforeseen emergency or event. Watch for lack of imagination and creativity and a tendency to do things the hard way. The accent is on being practical. You may find it necessary to sacrifice or use up one thing in order to create something better to fill a higher need. Literally like the data center. Funny. Your greatest advantage lies in using your common sense. Look for ways to create what you need for other things what you don't need. Guard against being short-sighted or overconfident about the availability of resources. Do not get caught unprepared for an emergency. Plan ahead. Practicality, functionalism, resources, skillfulness, constructiveness, fundamentalism, realism, productiveness, and sensibility. Oh man, I think about these squares. Well, certainly Taurus is food, right? So Taurus is food. It could be batteries. It could be generators. It could be things that are like backup just in case. So whether it's like an extra battery charger for a cell phone, if it's going to be, you know, some flashlights, if it's going to be some extra food or some extra money or something like that. Mars squaring means that you will hear and you will see people either online or in communities being like, you need to get prepared, you need to have these things. And they're going to be talking about it, trying to wake up individuals and making them realize that whether it's food, money, or necessary resources, there's either about to be shortages or there's going to be people who are going to be scrambling going, well, what do? I don't know what to do. And it could be, you know, fires too. Mars square Uranus is pretty common. I've seen that with some pretty prominent fires over the last couple of years. Certainly Mars can be weapons and Aquarius can be frequency or lasers. So I'm hoping that's not the case, but sometimes we do see that, or lightning strikes or significant storms that materialize as something that develops into a fire. But I think that this Sabian symbol is interesting because, like, cutting wood, right? Like, thankfully I've never lived in a very cold place, but I've certainly stayed places where I recognize that, yeah, earlier in the, you know, fall and even in the summer, you got to be out there stacking wood, making sure you have what you need so you're not kind of caught with your pants down, you know, in the winter where you're out there doing it in the cold, or dealing with wet wood or stuff that you can't get to because there's snow. So that aspect of preparation and sacrifice and doing what needs to be done now, you know, to be able to kind of help everybody in the long run makes sense. The symbol really speaks to like this also radical transformation through destruction. And that's not the square. That's literally where Uranus is. Where Mars is. So this radical transformation and like sudden, you know, exponential development, growth, speed in order to bring about something. Uranus and Taurus is very much about banking collapse, you know, bond market crash, stock market crash, things like that, that there is going to be some potential outage or surge or quick development, even politically. Mars and Aquarius could be about political kind of conflicts and things that have been kind of concealed, right? Connected to Saturn and Neptune, that could have some pretty big impacts on the stock market. So it's a quick moving transit. We'll feel it for about a week, but this is the closing square. And so it makes me feel like that the inevitable is coming. I also have speculated for some time that it might be like an orchestrated crash to try to like bring on like a new system. And I think that with the tree, which took years to grow, obviously then gets cut down in the Sabian symbol, and it's used for fuel, and it's about warmth and kind of growth and energy. So is this the turning where you start to see like the market is really breaking down and collapsing, and then the impact that that has on the whole system, but that it's being designed that way to either usher in a new system or for people to panic, and then when everything is crashing, you're going to see a bunch of people who are wealthy jump in, and then they're going to buy stuff for like pennies on the dollar, right? And it's all about that sacrifice of something that seemed permanent, you know, to create something that's useful, right? Because that's how money is made. That's how these people make their money. So in the context of Mars square Uranus here, it's almost like you're being asked to let something die or die off or break off or be severed so something new can be born from that. Old structures, old identities, old ways of being, you know, they may need to be kind of burned to fuel your next potential chapter. Now, Uranus is in Taurus, obviously that 28 degrees, I've read it to you guys before. That's a woman, you know, who's a mature woman, you know, suddenly realizing that there's an opportunity for unexpected romance. So this particular Sabian symbol is interesting because I think that it really talks about rediscovering what makes you feel alive, especially after a period of kind of feeling past your prime, or you missed your opportunity, or you missed your chance and you're stuck in routine. So there's this sudden like recognition of your own value and your magnetism and your own kind of like desirability that comes through. So in the context of the square, it could mean that Uranus and Taurus is actually disrupting your relationship with security, value, self-worth. And really the message here is that your worth isn't based off of what you have. Okay, because Uranus and Taurus is saying some things can be synthetic, they could not be real. You could have a real steak, you could have a, fake steak, some of those plant-based steaks. But what determines whether or not it's actually going to bring you something that's going to be healthy and like nutritious, right? So when we think about this, it's saying that it's disrupting your relationship with security, values, and self-worth. And the message here is that your worth isn't based on what you have, it's based off of who you are. So, and also who you are is far more magnetic than what you have lost or what you have had to let go or what gets severed. So on February 27th, we see this square. It's going to be peaking around 10:40-ish a.m. Central Time. I'm here in Texas, so that's going to be around 8:38 on the Pacific Coast, around 11:38 a.m. on the East Coast. My advice is just take your time. Don't rush through things. Don't be trying to kind of get ahead of things. You can be preparing for some dramatic, change that can be happening, but we don't want to be pushing too quickly. I think that if this were me, I would really be focusing on just that day in particular. Probably the next day too, when it hits 28 degrees. So I would say the 27th, 20th, and then the 29th. If there is a 29th, let me check, because I know February is a bit of a wonky month. Hold on. So it'll be on the 27th, 28th. Yeah, so on the 1st. So the 27th through March 1st is when you're going to be seeing this most predominantly. And this is when the square is exact, and this is going to be the peak energy. So this will likely bring sudden disruptions. You can see that rebellious energy come through. You can see that electric tension. My warning for this is don't make any impulsive decisions in the heat of the moment. Mars can be guns. Mars can also be about weapons, and where you can go toe-to-toe with somebody who can just be crazy. Like that's literally Uranus, and that could be just like a split second where everything changes. We also really want to channel this energy into something that's going to be about breakthroughs when it comes to action. And remember, with that Mars connection to Saturn and Neptune, it can be where, an individual is inspiring the masses to rebel against something, to not sign on or get involved or support something that may not actually be good for us in the long term. We're also going to see that the energy is going to peak right around the time it hits 28 degrees, so that'll be the next day here, and it'll go into the 1st until Mars is leaving about 29 degrees, and then things will start to subside. But we all know that on March on the 3rd, we're going to have a lunar eclipse in Virgo, so that energy continues to keep rolling. I think when Mars leaves Aquarius, that'll be taking place on the 2nd. This is where the energy shifts from breakthrough to kind of Pisces. It's more kind of dissolving and getting into the flow. Now, the overall themes of this transit and what is actually happening energetically, I think, is number one, the urge to break free. That's the biggest takeaway from a Mars-Uranus square. This transit will amplify our desires for independence. We are going to get testy. We are going to be impatient. We're not going to be one told what to do. And just watch for the restlessness and also situations where you feel deeply done with something, okay? It could be something, someone, it could be structures that feel limiting, and it's almost like your inner rebel is going to kind of start to wake up. I also think this is going to be about sudden changes and plot twists, and this is where I know it's not smart to make predictions with Uranus, because Uranus, you think it's going to go left and it goes right. It's always zigzagging. It always brings something expected. So it could bring surprise reversals, underdog situations, teams that we didn't think were going to win something suddenly do. Something that we thought was sure and in the bag is suddenly like having a free fall moment. And I think the positive is that it is going to be exciting. We are going to see that there can be sudden breakthroughs, particularly in science or in food or in banking, potentially in energy as well. But it does have this notorious side for sudden disruption. So either way, things won't be boring. You will be entertained. Don't worry. I think this transit teaches us that we have to question our desires, and it's been a fun one. I remember when Uranus was going through Taurus and Saturn was going through Aquarius, and they were squaring off, and that was while I was going through my Mars opposition, to Uranus, and it definitely tested a lot of things for me in terms of what I valued. It got me thinking a lot about money. What am I doing with it? Why am I working so hard for it? Why is it important to me? How much do I need? Where is it going to be best invested? Where is it going to be safe? And it led me down the path of learning more about the financial system and, how money is used to perpetuate wars and how there is a huge wealth divide and major inequality in the world. And that, unfortunately, wars makes money and, the crime and the corruption and all the stuff that kind of comes with that. So it's really influenced me from what companies I choose to buy from to what creators I choose to support to, everything. And now it's nice to see Uranus finally leaving Taurus here soon because I feel like it's definitely got me on the path of having just a better understanding of how that stuff works, and also a complete rearrangement of my value system, just seeing Uranus in opposition to my own natal Mars. It got me questioning a lot about my desires. And so I think that when we go through this transit, Mars in Aquarius is going to be asking, what do I really want? Or is it that I think I should want this? Am I being told I should want this? And where do those beliefs kind of come from? And I think it can be a powerful moment for self-honesty. So keep that in the back of your mind, that if you're kind of feeling like something is building up to this pressure point, it might be okay to reassess your values, and if it's time to detach or cut something free and have that freedom, it can actually feel quite liberating. However, there's always a lot of reckless behavior when we see Mars and Uranus squaring off. It's somebody's causing a problem, somebody's getting, combative or confrontational, or you don't really know what somebody is going to do next. And I've seen throughout transit, with Mars-Uranus squares, people get electrocuted. I've seen people have issues with fireworks. I have seen people that have had a lot of neurological issues or nervous system issues. I've also seen that there have been people who have been involved in sudden, bar fights, issues with, firearms going off, all kinds of stuff like that. So you guys have to really kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that the exact same square that's taking place is connected to that solar eclipse in Aquarius that we just had. So I think we are going to see some of the angry mob mentality online. I think we may see quite a few protests from this. And around this date, decisions can backfire. So if you're being too trigger happy, or if there's a knee-jerk reaction, it could potentially be dangerous or deadly. And I do not say that lightly. So, my advice is don't act in the heat of the moment. Sleep on it. Give it a couple days. Once Mars goes into Pisces, people are going to be feeling a little bit more passive, a little bit more remorseful too. And Mars going into Pisces can also represent, because of some crazy things that are going on with crowds and protests, that people are going to jail. Mars is connected to Saturn and Neptune and Aries. So if people are acting out or they're pushing back against things, they can find themselves confined in some way, shape, or form. Now, we can use this for healing work, believe it or not, because this aspect also supports really healing revolving around boundaries and self-assertion. Certainly some of these squares can materialize as that moment where you're like, enough is enough, and you stick up for yourself, and you're really pursuing what you want, and you're doing it unapologetically. And I think that's the credit that I will give to this transit. I think just the key is kind of conscious direction. What do you do with that energy? What do you channel it into? If you channel it into something intentionally, that can be good for following your goals, connecting with community, developing, new social connections, your people, finding your tribe, then it can actually be quite positive, and it can give us the opportunity to use the energy intentionally rather than destructively. And hopefully this will be used for societal and kind of collective changes, because that's where the energy is until we get to about the second, when it goes into Pisces. So this will definitely highlight, I think, some social movements, definitely some political squabbles, issues revolving around freedom and security on the collective level. And this is the times they are a change in type energy. You guys are going to see that. I think that the $1 million question is, how do you work with it instead of against it? And I encourage you to have that kind of philosophy, because I find that with the fixed squares, it's like, I'm going to dig in my heels and I'm not going to let this happen. And then situations will erupt and it's going to almost like lightning strikes, force us to kind of sever or separate from things. And I think that the key here is for the to-do list, question outdated structures in your life. That will be something that will really start to give you, I think, an aha moment. And it could be with your values, with your spending habits, with your friends, with your communities. Think about that. Explore new approaches to old problems, because Uranus really likes to kind of get out of the box, and Mars is willing to kind of get to where it wants to go. And if it can do that in a new way, then it can get there faster. This is also about asserting your independence in healthy ways. So there's a fine line between, doing it in a healthy way and just being a jerk. So you will see some people that are going to feel justified in their behavior. And I would say just observe. That doesn't mean that you have to engage. And you can take calculated risks, but not reckless ones. Okay. So it's okay to do something different, but don't try to just speed your way through it. Surround yourself with forward-thinking people, and do your damnedest to express your unique vision this week. You never know who you will connect with and inspire. However, for the don't list, don't make impulsive decisions in the heat of the moment. Don't burn bridges just because you're restless either. And don't confuse disruption with progress. I think we're going to see a lot of people who are going to be disrupting things, disrupting the status quo, claiming that they're, trying to push for equality or some other kind of social issue, when in reality, it's going to be probably, destroying things, burning things down, fighting people, being combative, and they're going to say, oh, well, we were protesting, and don't act out with anger without considering the consequences, because a lot of people will burn down friendships with Mars and Aquarius, and connections to community and financial support systems. And also, you guys do not want to force change before it's ready. In a couple weeks' time, Mars is going to start sextiling Uranus. That would be an easier time to make change. We're also going to see then Mars going into Aries, in April. And that's going to be a time where usually Mars does its best work, but Mars is going to be meeting with Saturn and Neptune. Like, some people are going to get isolated. They're going to get banned. They're going to get removed from groups. They're going to get kind of the cold shoulder from some, groups collectively or socially. And I think that what we need in the future moving forward is we need more communities. We need more connection. We don't need more people who are angry and divided and isolated. We need to be figuring out ways to create solutions and work together, because we're in this together. It doesn't matter our gender, our background, our race, our belief system. So much of this is about working together, because I think the common challenge that we have is being able to have freedom, and also being able to have financial and environmental security. And so that's really kind of the square that's kind of coming up in this particular week. So it's going to be quite a bit. Just remember that this is rebel with a cause energy. So you can be the rebel. Just make sure that you have a cause if you're going to kick up some dust. Now, I would like to show you guys where this square is taking place for the various rising signs. And I'm going to show this to you from the perspective of the Western whole sign system. If you're a Placidus user like me, you can just look at where you have 27 degrees of Taurus or Aquarius in your chart. And if you are not a whole sign user, if you're not a Placidus user and you want to use whole sign, you can. I recommend listening to your rising sign first, because that's going to tell you which houses are kind of getting hit with the Mars-Uranus square. And then listen to your sun sign to see how it's impacting you creatively, or your career, or your joy. And then listen to your moon sign to see how this is impacting you emotionally. Yes, you'll get something out of all three of them, but the rising sign is generally the most accurate. So remember, my Aries, my Scorpios, my later degrees of the fixed signs, you guys are all feeling the effects of this. I am now going to take you through the rising signs. So grab your chart so you can see where this is taking place. And I'm going to start with my Aries risings. My Aries, you guys are ruled by Mars. Okay, so wherever Mars goes is where you are, and Mars is in the final kind of moments of moving through your 11th house, which is going to be dealing with connections to your friends, connections to your communities, your online groups, anything that's going to be dealing with also your goals and your future, your social life as well. So probably what you're going to be feeling like with Mars squaring Uranus is that your financial goals are changing, your social goals are changing, you're pushing to kind of break away from old, outdated ways of looking at money and what your financial goals were. Maybe it's going to be about making some changes in your investment strategy and your spending habits. It can also mean that, you know, you're kind of connecting and collaborating with groups of people who are helping you when it comes to investment or your strategy, or just where your friendships are really pushing on you to evolve when it comes to what you value the most. I think the key here is to like really ask yourself, what is it that you truly value, and what is it that you're trying to shake out? Maybe there is less of attachment to like material things. Maybe you're okay with that because really what you're valuing more is experiences rather than things. And it can also really talk a lot about just wanting to have connections to people who are going to be providing new ways for you to learn about making money or for financial stability. So I know you've gone through this Uranus transit here for some time, but at least your planetary ruler Mars is in the superior position. So I do think that it's going to, through connections and groups and new associations, help you really broaden your horizons in terms of your financial situation and possibly have a little bit more freedom. Good luck. All right, my Taurus and my Taurus risings. Yes, you guys are the ones who are kind of getting slapped with the Mars square Uranus. So if you happen to have anything 26, 27, 28 degrees of Taurus, be on the lookout at the end of February. Know that this energy is coming in fast, it's coming in hot, and you need to be mindful of your interactions with other people. So for Taurus, what you're going to find is kind of happening here is that Mars is going through your career house. And as it goes through your career house, you're really busy, you're working, you're moving and shaking, feeling very competitive. Maybe you're overworking, or maybe you're just seeing a lot of clients, or you're working with partners, or even with a romantic partner or a spouse. And it's now coming into a hard square with Uranus in your sign. So it does mean that you're feeling overworked, burnt out. You know, you've been really trying your best to kind of get as much work done as possible, but you might be feeling just really, zapped, energetically zapped. And there could be conflicts that you can have with superiors. So think like cops, judges, parents, anything that's also connected to bosses. And one side of you is, like really willing to put yourself out there and go to bat and like potentially have a little bit of some public sparring going on. But the other side of you is like, I'm too tired to fight. I don't want to do it, and I'm wanting to kind of break free. So it does represent tension either with superiors at work, or some tension between, the work you've been doing and what your body is telling you, which might mean that you actually need a bit of a rest. So watch for the tension there. I think to kind of lean into this and, do your best work. I would be really looking at where Venus is retrograde, like Mercury is retrograde conjunct Venus, and Venus rules your chart. So in the 11th house, that's saying you need more friends, you need community, you need some support, you need some socializing. That may ease up some of the tension that you're feeling like, just from a insane amount of work that you guys have been doing over the last couple of weeks. So once the square is over, for the most part, you're in the clear. You are going to see that Uranus is finally going to leave your sign here in about a month or so. And then it's going to start shaking up your money zone. But yeah, watch for bullies, watch for public displays of, some kind of competitiveness or conflicts that you're having either with business partners, clients, or spouses. That could be very, very public now, Taurus. So be mindful of that. All right, we've got Gemini and Gemini rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Mars going through Aquarius in your natal 9th house. Fellow sister air sign. So if you're a later degree Gemini or Gemini rising, this is easier to navigate. Mars is moving to the house that deals with education, travel, your belief systems, legal matters, and it's squaring Uranus. So I could see this as really pushing for travel, for education, for learning, especially when it comes to health and habits. And that square to Uranus means that there is almost something that's like at odds either with your belief systems, your travel plans, or there is a sense of feeling very restless and wanting to get out and about and doing things, but not really knowing what's going to happen. So I could see for some of you guys, there's just some restlessness revolving around feeling like, okay, I want to plan something or I want to book something, but I don't know where I want to go and I can't quite make up my mind. Watch for that. We see lots of changes happening in education and learning or spiritual or cultural beliefs that are kind of happening here. So with Mars being tied to coworkers and your health and also with your habits and friends, I think that this is about you just feeling a little anxious about some potential changes that's either going on within your social group or involving travel or education. And I would say pace yourself, don't rush to plan something or travel somewhere. And make sure that, you know, the plans aren't half-baked when it comes to travel or education either, because there can be a feeling of there being some kind of unexpected curveballs that can come your way that's going to push you to maybe rethink something about travel or education. Good luck, Gemini. For my Cancers and Cancer risings, you guys are going to experience Mars going through the sign of Aquarius in your 8th house, squaring Uranus in your 11th house in Taurus. Now, the 8th house deals with banking, loans, other people's money, investments, taxes, inheritance, and it's squaring Uranus. So the one thing you want to watch for my Cancers and Cancer risings is be very careful with borrowing and lending with friends. Be very mindful of your goals when it comes to friendships. There can be a sense of friendships that kind of change or pivot rather quickly, where a friend could enter or exit your life, or there could be the beginning of a new friendship where, you know, something's kind of coming to an end. Mars also deals with romance and children and drama. So there could be some drama over joint expenses with children. There could be some drama over situationships and whether or not, you know, there is togetherness or if there is a sense of kind of separating and severing. I do think it's also about kind of healing issues that you have emotionally or psychologically, so you can get back into feeling like you're social and you're connecting with people, especially if there hasn't been a lot of togetherness that's been taking place in recent months. And it can really streamline connecting you with people who can help you feel valued and also increase your opportunity when it comes to your earnings. Good luck. For Leo and Leo rising, especially if you have anything 26, 27, 28 degrees of Leo or Leo rising, pay attention because this will be opposing and squaring you. So you will be involved in a T-square between your 1st, 7th, and your 10th house, which makes you feel like your career is like about to pivot or it's on a crossroads, depending on what's happening either with relationships, partnerships, or clients. Now, obviously, Mars has been going through your 7th house. It's a lot of action in relationships. Some Leo and Leo risings have seen a rapid, picking up of relationships, and they're developing very quickly. Others have decided to go their separate ways under the recent eclipse, and so there's been like a cutting or a severing that's happening in relationships. I think that with Mars being connected to your 4th house of home and family, you're more willing to kind of confront relationship issues, domestic issues, family issues, moving issues. And now Mars is putting the pressure on Uranus. So it means that there's actions that's being taken by relationships, partnerships, maybe a relationship with a therapist, even an astrologer who's encouraging you to make a job change your relationship status, enter or exit a relationship, launch a business. This can also be a partner that's really pushing you and supporting you to make some big job changes. So if you are been digging in your heels, not wanting to change careers, or if you have been not wanting to step back from work, or if you've been reluctant maybe to put yourself out there, a coach, a therapist, a mentor, or a partner can be pushing you a little bit too much too soon to make some of these changes. And you can also feel like a partner can be putting the pressure on you to a point where you're like, okay, you know what, like the relationship stuff and the work stuff, it's just too intertwined, or a business partnership. So, not rushing anything in relationship or business, I think is important, and really confronting some of the issues that have been going on the home front, I think is part of what's going on with Mars going through your 7th. This will definitely impact you because you're going to see it's going to reactivate that eclipse in your 7th house. So for a lot of you guys, it's separating from a business partner, separating from a partner, getting into a relationship or partnering with somebody who can then suddenly kind of help you grow and develop your professional platform. So it can actually be really good. If a relationship is ended, it's going to help kind of fertilize what's going to be a new status and a new career change. If a new relationship just came in, they might be encouraging you and trying to work with you. Good luck, Leo. For my Virgos and Virgo risings, you guys are going to be experiencing the Mars in Aquarius in your 6th house, squaring Uranus and Taurus in your 9th, okay? So Mars in the 6th is about health, fitness, habits, work, productivity, coworkers, how you communicate with them, your daily habits and routine. And that square to Uranus is the pressure of, you know, I've got a trip coming, I've got education stuff planned, I'm wanting to, you know, kind of break away, or I'm wanting to get back into teaching, training, traveling, and just scrambling like a mad person, trying to figure out how much work you can get done, how organized you can get, how prioritized you are when it comes to your health and your habits, so that way you can make more time for freedom or leisure. Yes, there could be some issues with travel or education under these squares, where there could be a sudden change at the last minute, or things feel like they're speeding up and you don't have enough time to get the things done that you want to do. So be mindful of that. Obviously, Mars is also tied to your 8th house, so it can be about some of the impacts that's going on with you emotionally or psychologically from overwork, and that you're going to be learning a lot more about health and fitness, and how, you know, fitness and tests and expenses connecting to fitness or health are really teaching you to pace yourself, so that way you can be more grounded in your body and not feel like your nervous system is like all over the place. So I've seen a lot of Virgo and Virgo risings that are learning about like alternative types of medicine, holistic healing, you know, spiritual healing, vibrational healing. But just mind your schedule, because it almost looks like you're trying to pack too much into like the next couple of weeks, and you really need to make sure that you have time to kind of do it all. Good luck. For my Libras and Libra risings, you guys are going to be experiencing Mars going through Aquarius in your natal 5th house, fellow sister air sign, coming into a square with Uranus in Taurus in your 8th. Now, the 5th house is about romance, play. It's about pleasure, dating, creativity, self-expression. And so it's kind of cool to see Mars in this particular area of the chart, because you're willing to take risks now. And those risks might be financial risks, they might be relationship risks, they might be risks in regards to creative projects, children, dating. And it's pressing on Uranus, which rules your 5th house. So big risk, big reward, I could see for some Libras and Libra risings. I would just say don't be willing to risk money that you're not willing to lose. I also think that with Uranus in the 8th house, it is putting the pressure on partners' money if you're in a relationship. So it can be a sense of wanting to go out, wine, dine, entertain, have fun, expenses relating to kids. And that square to Uranus is like your partner being like, hey, cool it. You know, like we're spending a bit of money going and doing all this like entertainment stuff, or we're spending a lot of money on kids. And children can suddenly bring up the themes of increased costs, or changes with insurance, or changes with money owed, like child support, you know, or changes with insurance related expenses, and pressure in the relationship. So it's almost like there's a huge focus to now want to have more fun and togetherness, because it's not just about having fun, it's trying to increase that kind of like sexual charge and that friction, and really bringing about new forms of expression in intimate relationships. But be careful with taking risks, Libras and Libra risings. I will tell you guys that this can be a bit tricky, because you can be a little impulsive with either new hobbies or investments, assuming that there's going to be immediate kind of results, and that's not always the case. So have fun, but try to be cautious with some of that. All right, so we've got my Scorpios and Scorpio risings. Certainly Scorpio, you're going to feel this because obviously Mars is your chart ruler, but especially if you're, I mean, all Scorpio placements will feel it, but if you're a later degree Scorpio, you know, that 26, 27, 28 degrees, this will be creating a fixed T-square in your chart, where it's going to square your Scorpio placement. So it's going to be about how well you're adjusting to change on the home front. And it's going to square Uranus in your 7th house, where it's going to bring up some tension with a relationship. And then Mars will be the T-square, which means you're bringing about some of the Uranian things that are going to happen. So Positive manifestation of this, because Mars represents health and habits, is that you decide to start taking some kind of action on the home front when it comes to cleaning, organization, care, dealing with pets, dealing with moving or do-it-yourself projects at home. However, it is squaring Uranus, which rules your 4th house of home, in the 7th, which means you might be telling a partner, I want to move, or let's sell the house, or let's renovate, or, maybe you're just driving people crazy because you're like stir crazy and you're running around the house and you're getting a lot of stuff done and you're working on odds and ends and you're taking care of things. I would say if you're a Scorpio or Scorpio rising, like anything that deals with anything electrical, right? Like power drills or anything like power tools, wiring anything, anything of that nature, be very careful this week with that Mars square Uranus. And also know that there is a fuse that has been lit in relationships. And whether this is a relationship with a parent, a family member, a roommate, a spouse, your actions are going to determine what is going to happen with this kind of blow up situation, potentially with another person. So Uranus is being, influenced by Venus, which is in the 5th. So there could be a lot of friction in a relationship over children. There could be a lot of friction in a relationship over odds and ends and things that you feel like you're doing at home, but you're like, I don't know if a partner is, seeing that I'm doing it, if they're helping me. And you may get a little testy with someone, and then it's going to set that relationship off. Now, a positive manifestation is that if something needs to be cleared the air, if you need to clear the air about something, you can, but I would say try to do it in a tactful way. But this is that finale, Scorpio. So go back and think about what's happened over the last 2 weeks with the eclipses that have been in your first house. Whatever got triggered with that eclipse, it looks like it brought up a lot of tension in a relationship, or it was pushing a partner out of the house, or it was pushing you to possibly consider moving or trying to relocate or trying to meet somebody in another place. It can also push some of you guys to actually move and move in with people. But something else is going to come up here, and you need to be very careful because it does look like it's going to be something that is said, not so much an action. It's words that are said that are going to trigger something. Good luck. All right, so we've got Sag and Sag rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Mars going through Aquarius in your natal 3rd house of communication, learning, siblings, movement, vehicles, and the mind. It is picking up the energy of your 12th house, which is subconscious thoughts and ideas, and it's squaring Uranus in your 6th house of health, habits, and pets. Aquarius, how you communicate with siblings, coworkers, and also I would say your neighbors this week will probably test you a little bit. Do not be driving on your phone, okay? Do not be texting on your phone. Be very careful when you're driving. Don't be speeding. Watch for where there can be some issues with vehicles, especially if you have an electric vehicle or there are some issues potentially with electronics at work, which could kind of like disrupt your routine in some way if there's like an outage or if something is down. This is also about just taking time to breathe, and breath work can be so incredibly important if you're integrating it into your daily like health practices or going for long walks. That's something else I would really recommend here. The fact that Uranus is friendly to you by sign makes it a little bit easier. Mars is friendlier to you by sign, makes it a little bit easier. But Uranus is wrapping up its tour in your 6th house. So it's really kind of saying it's pushing you when it comes to communication, breath work, and kind of expressing how you think and how you feel without letting some of this disruption or those conversations like deregulate you in your nervous system or keep you from being able to, be calm and steady and productive and getting things done. Watch for some kind of potential conversation that, is probably going to feel like it's just not the right time. But it is necessary, especially if it's going to lead to healthier relational habits or better relationship habits with people, even at work. So just mind your P's and Q's and pace yourself and don't rush through things is my advice. All right, so we've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Mars going through the sign of Aquarius in your natal 2nd house of money, resources, and self-esteem. It will be squaring Uranus in your 5th house of children, love affairs, creativity, and self-employment. Mars deals with your goals and your friends. It's also tied to your home. So it does look like you are willing to put your money where your mouth is with Mars in your 2nd house. Take risks when it comes to going after what you love. So whether you're putting money into a hobby, your own business, if it's things that involve children, art, creativity, certainly, yeah, willing to take risks. I like the Mars square Uranus transit personally in these houses. I think about when I had Uranus going through my 5th house and it squared Mars, my natal Mars in my 2nd house. And during that transit was when I was just like, well, I don't have anything to lose. I might as well just try to start my business and see what happens, you know? And I was like, I just really love this and I'm going to put my time and my energy and my money into it. And bought tarot books and decks and, you know, put myself through astrology school and, you know, bought courses and did the whole 9 yards. And it ended up playing out very well, but it was a risk. So whatever that risk is that you're taking, it could be, you know, with a hobby or even a relationship, something that involves children too. I know a lot of like Capricorn and Capricorn risings that are like going through IVF, for example, right? Uranus in the 5th house. I've seen a lot of that where you're putting money into, you know, trying to have a kid. I could see that being the case, but I also think that some of you guys are really testing your hands at trying to get more creative and finding ways that you can bring in some more residual income and be more independent. If you're wanting to do those things, it's a good idea. Just like I said, pace yourself. It's not about immediate gratification. I do think that with Mars' tie to friends, networks, and communities, and also, you know, home, it means that you're having to kind of really figure out where you're going to get settled, and maybe that's somehow part of it. Do you set up a craft room? You know, do you try to find people in your new area that you're moving to or from that's going to have similar interests? Are you willing to spend a little bit of money on, you know, some of these particular kind of hobbies so you can connect with other people? Certainly a little bit more fun for you guys with this transit. It's not as difficult as it is for some of the other ones, but nevertheless, watch out for the pressure. For my Aquarius and Aquarius risings, you guys are just getting a double dose of it. And I keep laughing because I'm like, you guys are at odds with yourself this month. Obviously, Mars is going through your sign. So if you're 27, 28, 29-ish degrees of Aquarius, you're feeling the effects of this conjunction. It makes you bold. It makes you passionate, daring, you know, impulsive. And it's definitely picking up the energy of the eclipse where suddenly you just want to be speaking out, you want to be traveling, you want to be learning. There is a sense of feeling kind of like a little maybe restless. And Mars is tied to how you think and communicate. It's also tied to your career, and it's going to be coming into a square with Uranus, your modern day ruler. So it's a closing square, which means if there's going to be any change that's brought forth, Aquarius, it's brought forth by you. You would be the one changing your career, changing your style, changing your communication, deciding if you're moving, launching, writing, doing things. Like, it's all on you. Yes, some of these impulsive desires can definitely be, I think, a little disruptive on the home front. So you might have family members or partners or people being like, what has gotten into you? Like, what is going on? Like, what do you mean you want to move? Like, why do you need to go out of the house? What's up? And it's just because you feel like you can't sit still. And I would say with Saturn and Neptune moving into your 3rd house, writing, journaling, walking, jogging, movement will help. It'll help you navigate this, but watch for potential conflicts or blow-ups that you could be having in how you're communicating with either neighbors or siblings, potentially roommates or family members as well. You can get a little testy here. And it just looks to me like you're wanting to have a say, because Mars is about being in charge. You're wanting to have a say about how family members are going to behave, or how like the family dynamic is going to go, or whether or not, you know, somebody's going to be moving. And just mind your words and know that if you're feeling the pressure is coming from you probably like being in a place that's like outdated. Maybe you are spending too much time at home. Maybe you do need to potentially get out of the house. But I would say that, you know, when the blow-ups happen, you're going to look around and go like, well, why are they blaming me? And I'd be like, well, because you're being a little restless during this transit, but it will pass once it gets past that eclipse point by the end of March. All right, then we get to Pisces and Pisces risings. You guys are going to see Mars going through Aquarius in your natal 12th house, which is more about the subconscious, maybe some changes with your sleep, your subconscious patterns, maybe your beliefs, foreign travel, studies, and it's going to come into a square with Uranus in your 3rd house. Now, Mars can rule subconscious desires, especially physical or financial desires. and also travel or belief. So I do think that this can cause some travel hiccups for some of you guys. It can also mean that you're kind of behind the scenes planning what trips you want to go on, or maybe you're taking courses, you're doing lessons, or you're feeling like you're kind of busy up at night doing things. But like I said, it does disrupt your sleep schedule, and it can make you feel like a little bit more intuitively like on alert. And as it squares Uranus, which rules the 12th house, it also can like impact your speech patterns, or it can impact your ability to like feel like you're like functioning at all cylinders. It can also mean that there is some inner frustration or repressed anger that's creating like this tension in your voice or how you're connecting or communicating with people. So be mindful of your subconscious kind of like creeping up on you and impacting, you know, your mental health, your stress, anything that's connected to your communication patterns. And Mars is also strongly tied to, you know, your learning or education or traveling. So there could be a lot of travel, a lot of teaching, a lot of writing, other things that are kind of, you know, educational that are on your mind, and it's making you feel very restless, and it's making you feel like you just need a break, or you just, you know, you need to kind of take a step back. Walking and journaling would be really good for you guys as well. My advice is also listen to some of the intuitive punches and like hunches that kind of come through with Mars in your 12th house, because you might be feeling like it's time to move or go on a trip, or have some kind of change in the way that you're navigating, communicating with people. All right, guys. Well, that was the long and short of the Mars-Uranus square. I'm curious to see what kind of manifests. Certainly, I think it's a little bit bigger now that Uranus is about to leave, and we're seeing that kind of activation of the eclipses. So even I am kind of like, I don't know what it's going to bring. All I know is that this is very, very powerful, very potent energy. And remember, it's not about destroying for the sake of destruction. This is really about breaking free from whatever is kind of like holding us back and what doesn't fit, so we can become who we actually are. So the key is about managing this intentionally, channeling that inner rebel, and like I said, having a cause. As always, I'll see you guys on the other side. I will be here tomorrow for live eclipse readings. So if you guys want to find out what the lunar eclipse in Virgo means for you, join me here on Friday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. I will post the link in the community tab. So if you guys want to get in and secure your reading, head over there, and you guys can send your donation and your birth details in the memo box on the PayPal. You just have to scan the QR code to get in. And I'll do the readings live. And we usually shut them down before we even begin. So if you guys want to get in there, please do. And if this video resonated with you, if it was helpful, if some of this stuff kind of tracks, please do make sure you give me a thumbs up, like the video, make sure you're subscribed, and hit that bell button below so you can see more of my videos. I'm always here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. And I will be watching this transit to see what happens. Drop your comments in the comment box below. Let me know your rising sign and what's getting lit up in your chart. Are you guys ready for Uranus to go into Gemini? I know I am. So until next time, I'll see all of you guys very soon. Enjoy this energy, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care.